Hi chums, Push here. I thought I might try to do something different, and what I've got here pulled up is a video I've just put on my channel showing that a solo one phase on Phalanx Echo is still doable, but it's very, very tight. So what I thought we might end up doing today instead is recording and live commentating over this video and essentially illustrating how we're going to John Madden this shit. So here we go. Starts with the rally flag, and I'm going to go straight into my inventory. So we're going to pause there. And right off the bat, we're going middle tree on Well of Radiance. As far as I know, this is the only class that can one phase it. As many of you know, if you're hitting the boss while in a Well of Radiance, you can bypass enemy shields. That's because all the damage that you do inside your well is technically super damage, which gets ignored by the well. It doesn't necessarily work with Titan's bubble, just Well of Radiance. That's because Titans have the option to go with, the Sentinel shield they can walk around with. And that's how they could get their super kills. But Middle Tree, if they've got like a super kills bounty, they can only do it while standing inside a Well of Radiance. So we're going with that. And I will be going through the armor in a sec, because you can see I have Starfire Protocol. But first, we're going to go through the weapons in the loadout. Let's keep playing. First up is Witherhoard. So, Witherhoard does a lot of good things for us. It's got 3 separate uses in this room, and that is a lot for one weapon to be carrying. That's why it's worth our exotic slot. The big thing with Witherhoard is killing the knights. One tag with Witherhoard guarantees 1 dead knight. Now they have to catch it. It has to be an Eternal Blight. But if they catch it, you know that knight is going to be going down. And what's really helpful about Witherhoard is the amount of time you need to be exposed, maintain line of sight with one of your targets is very, very small compared to how much damage it's doing. You only need to be out there for a second. Once he's tagged, you can duck back in behind cover. On top of that, Witherhoard is also really great for spawn trapping scions, which we'll see in a little bit. And it even is supplemental boss damage, which is essential to make this work. You'll see we've got Falling Guillotine down a couple other slots. Once we get there, I'll talk about all the nerfs this strategy has got hit with since, I think, Season of Arrivals, when this dungeon first came out. Anywho, Catalyst is really, really, really good on it. If you can, try to grind it out before taking it in here. Essentially, the biggest thing it's going to grant you is auto-loading holster. Just cuts down a lot on reloading, although we do speed up those reloads because we do need to do it every once in a while. Let's go, keep going. Okay, Annual Skate. This is my trash cleanup weapon. There's any numbers that you can go in here. Any number of energy primary weapons. The reason I go with Annual Skate is a couple reasons. The big one is Dragonfly. I love this perk in Dungeons. I think it is one of the best ones that you can bring in, because the thing about Dungeons is everything hurts, but it's not overly tanky like what you might get in a GM. And in this case, with Dragonfly spec, you can see that's what we've got on instead of anything like Taken spec. What this is going to effectively do for us is really, really cut down on the Scion's multiplying mechanic. Land a headshot with Dragonfly on a weakened Scion, and just as he's spawning in his friend, if you can kill him with a headshot, you'll proc that Dragonfly explosion. That takes care of the one that he just spawned to, and you'll see that pop up a lot. There are other weapons in this slot that can take Dragonfly. There's a whole bunch. I tend to prefer hand cannons and bows for Dragonfly because they've got really, really generous aim assist cones. And to get the most out of this Dragonfly perk, you want to be hitting headshots every chance you get. If you kill something with a body shot, your Dragonfly is essentially not doing anything for you. Just one other thing, this is a 140. You've got a choice here. There are a couple 180s with Dragonfly. I think there is a 120 in bottom dollar. The 140s are nice because they're a 2-tap. The 120s are also a 2-tap. They just do it slower. The 120s can 1-tap with the empowering buff, pulled from a melee hit off of the Well of Radiance tree, but for reasons that I'm going to get to in a sec, we want to try to keep our melee kills down to a minimum in here. Again, though, anything would work here. You just use your favorite, energy cleanup weapon. This is almost entirely going to be used on Scions. Let's keep going. And Falling Guillotine. Okay. So, Falling Guillotine, it's been the weapon of choice for essentially the length of this entire dungeon. It's crazy. What Falling Guillotine is going to be getting for us is enough sustained damage at close range to just barely be able to do this. Let's see if it actually lists the... No, it does not. Okay. Falling Guillotine's been hit with 3 distinct nerfs, I think, since Season of Arrivals that we're going to be trying to get around. First is the Vortex frame itself. This was pretty heavily nerfed, I think, when Beyond Light came out to do less damage. And then in Season of the Splicer, I think the ammo cost on it went up as well. So we've got 2 problems. Not as much damage, and it's going to be chewing through our ammo very, very quickly. And then on top of all that, in the 30th anniversary patch, we've got Whirlwind Blade taking twice as long to stack up. 3 big nerfs. Still doable, but now it takes a lot of discipline. What I actually do with my Falling Guillotine is I'm going to switch on Enduring Blade instead of Jagged Edge. Basically to get as much ammo out of this thing as we possibly can. When you go for some of those longer lasting blades, you'll get more total damage stored up in your reserves, but you'll get less DPS. What we generally try to do is figure out how much ammo can we burn in the 45 seconds of the boss phase, and we try to maximize for that. If we run out of ammo ahead of time, it's a bit of a problem because we don't have anything really significant to keep doing damage in this loadout during that really tight damage window. I will show a couple night killing strategies to try to maintain that a little bit, as well as trying to accommodate for some of that in our armor. Let's keep going. Okay. So, first up is our first armor mod, Striking Light and Uncatchable. We're putting on the Striking Light mod, and I'm not actually interested in the Striking Light effect itself. What that does is it generates an orb of power for you on a melee or a sword kill, costing 1 stack of Charge with Light. Now, we don't really want to be burning our charges in this way. What I'm interested in is the second perk, Uncatchable, which is more damage resist while sprinting. And we're going to be needing that a lot in here. We're doing a lot of sprinting with the moats, trying to stay alive. Knights are constantly on our asses. We're going to use this to stay a little bit more alive. The Striking Light thing is not the end of the world. Because we're going to be using Taking Charge, we can pick up that orb of power to get that charge of light back, but in general, we kind of want to avoid it. Let's keep going. And there's the other half of our arc mods, Lucent Blade. Right here. So, Lucent Blade and Replenishing Guard. We definitely want Replenishing Guard. That speeds up the charge rate for your heavy attack, and we're going to be using that like crazy in here. Lucent Blade, also essential. It's a 35% damage buff to swords while you're charged with light. What you'll see further down the road is that we're going to be going supercharged and charged up to boost those stacks as much as we can. We're using Striking Light on the helmet just to make sure that both of those perks are active. I've also got a grenade launcher loader on, which helps speeds up Wither Horde a little bit more. Sometimes it can feel like you don't really have it on, but it is helping. Let's keep going. Okay. Next up, the chest armor. So we're going Starfire Protocol. Let me get this out of the shot here. There we go. Okay, Starfire Protocol. Why? Extra fusion grenade. We go with fusion grenades. We barely ever use them for actually doing damage. They're purely there as a free heal whenever we need it. The reason this is so good is when you're holding a stack of 5 motes, if you use your class ability, your Rift, your Dodge, your Wall, whatever class you're on, that's going to eat that dark mode or light mode that you're holding. It's going to basically remove it from your hand. You've done all this work collecting, your 5 of the same color mode, and it's gone. Sometimes you feel like you just need to do it anyway because you desperately need to heal. While you're holding the mote, you are still allowed to overcharge your grenade, toss it at your feet, and give you a heal. I do that a couple times in here, and it is a huge difference. It makes a world of difference in here. Mine is Void, but turns out that doesn't matter so much, at least in my setup. The reason being is because of these mods here. What's going on here is I used to run a concussive dampener and a void resist. The reason I would do that is the void resist 2x void equals 40% damage resist against specifically the knight boomer cannons. I know a lot of people really don't like the fire that the knights are putting out, but honestly, the fire is sort of the best case scenario for those knights. When they're doing it, it locks them in place, makes them a real easy target for Wither Horde to hit, and the fire doesn't actually, the fire hurts bad, but you've got the time to get out. And once the fire's down, especially if he was only aiming at one spot, it's only covering a very tiny spot on the ground. Most of the time, what's going to kill you in here are the Hive boomer cannons. Now, if we were to go with 1x void plus 1x concussive, what you're going to end up looking at is a roughly 42. Here, let me erase that. 42% reduction, specifically in the boomer cannons. The reason being is each one of these is 25%. You're essentially taking 25% off of a damage that's already had 25% of it taken off. It's 0.75 squared ends up being about 0.56. So about or closer to 0.58. So you're looking at a little bit extra damage reduction. The sword reserves, however, is a recent addition to the build, and that's a direct response to the Whirlwind Blade nerf. It's going to take twice as long and twice as much ammo to build up your Whirlwind Blade stacks. You really need the extra sword reserves to make this work. I don't like taking off 2 resist mods down at the bottom, but 1 concussive dampener, you're looking at minus 25% for the void boomers and minus 25% on the fire. So you're getting a little bit of the edge taken off, and both things that can hurt pretty bad. The Scions, of course, hurt bad with the arc, but what we do during our play is cut them down very quickly so that they never end up being an issue in the first place. Lastly, we have Taking Charge. All of our weapons are masterworked, so we are going to be using Taking Charge as our way of getting stacked up to ×5 charge of light by the time damage gets around. Let's keep going. Okay, so this stack is really simple. It's just Grenade Launcher, Scavenger, and Supercharge. Grenade Launcher Scav is expensive. It's 5, but it gets you a bunch more shots for your Witherhoard every time you pick it up, and you will be getting so much that it can just basically be your main source of damage, especially on the Knights throughout this entire thing. Supercharged is to increase our stacks. Our goal is to get up to 5 stacks by the time we get to damage. Let's keep going. And lastly, we have Passive Guard and Charged Up. Now, Passive Guard is the only mod that is seasonal in this setup. It's also probably the least essential out of all the mods. I like to throw it on because it's available, because I have the room, and because it does help, especially in the first 15 seconds of the fight, as you'll see. We also have Charged Up just to finish off our stacks, and I had a little bit extra room, so I used a Discipline mod, get a little bit extra grenade energy. That's always helpful in here. The double stacks doesn't necessarily, or the double stacks of grenade energy offered by Starfile don't necessarily improve our grenade recharge rate, unless we're doing something specific. So this is purely there just to sort of take the overflow energy we generate when we don't need one, have a spare one in reserves. But when Passive Guard goes away this season, you can go with basically anything in here. You can go with Bomber. If you really need something special ammo-wise, you can go Special Ammo Finisher. Any of those work. Discard this. Let's keep going. I'll go over the stat distribution real quick. Let's see if we can get it back. Beautiful. Stat distribution is pretty simple, pretty standard for what you might see on a Warlock. Do not forget about your resilience here, because Well of Radiance can now be broken, and the boss's Boob Cannon can certainly break your Well of Radiance. That would be a bad deal. I haven't had it break with the 64 figure I'm looking at. The places you should be sacrificing, get these stats low, are probably your strength and your intellect. You don't need intellect too bad. In an ideal world, this is a one phase, you'll already have your super ready to go. And in a non-ideal world, if you don't get it in the one phase, the next round is going to be so long that you're just going to get your Well of Radiance back, especially considering it's a tier 5. Other than that, you just want to be making sure you boost your discipline and recovery. Discipline to get the charges back, and recovery is always a very good thing too. So let's get to the play. I'm going to start the encounter, and I'm going to immediately head over here, and let's pause right here. So we're going to start the encounter with the Phalanx Echo coming in, then 3 Knights, and then 2 waves of Scions. The Scions will always come in when you dunk, and the Knights will always come in when there are no more Knights on the field. So once you bring down all 3, another set of 3 come in. But if you leave one Knight up, that Knight will just stay there permanently. You won't get any more spawns. Because we're starting the encounter, we are starting to get our first Scions. Now, Scions spawn in a set pattern. They will either always come in here, and then back here, behind these rocks in this section, or they'll both be spawning that way, where we can't see them right now, and they're always alternate. So the first ones are always going to come right here, and then the second group in the first wave always comes around the corner. So what you'll see me do is set some pre-wither hordes in those sections to try to spawn trap as much as I can. And I'm not worried about the knights. I'm just trying to bring these signs down quick. We'll set our traps down. Boom, here come the first signs. I got some of them right off the bat. And we'll try to finish off as many as we can before it starts getting a little bit hot. Now, the knights started to collapse on me, and what I'm going to do is start my safe rotation. What I'd like to do now real quick is show off some of the safest spots for you in this arena. So let me draw the thing. Let's say your arena is sort of in a big circle here, where you've got your sort of exit portal right in the middle. You've got cover spots about here. You've got a tiny one about here, and then you've got the smallest ones up around here. And where are we right now? Just for reference, we are right here looking this way, right? So those two structures off in the distance of this viewpoint are these structures right here. In terms of safety, your first priority is always going to be hanging out in this area. All of this back here, there's lots of cover. If you're taking damage from the sides, you've got all this space in the middle where you can avoid taking that damage. And you've got not one, but two of these large structures to sort of satellite in between. If this area is not safe, your next priority is coming over here to number 2, essentially where my player character is right now. This is okay. It's a little bit wider than the worst spots, but you can get collapsed on pretty bad over here. And then the worst spot to hang out in is over here at number 3. There's not enough cover here, really. If you try to stand behind one of these structures, you can take lots of fire coming around the edges. It's not ideal. What you'll notice is I've numbered these 1, 2, and 3. That is essentially a safe way to rotate around this spot. And you use those numbers to say, you know, okay, I want to spend most time here, some time at number 2, and then number 3, when I get over there, I know I need to be moving quick. It's not going to be safe forever. So what I'm doing now is I'm heading over to what I know is a really safe spot. I'm going to set up camp over there, and I'm going to start getting control of this area and start figuring out what I want for the moats. Let's keep going. I hunker down and I take a look at my team's work, and I start tagging some of these knights. Now, I'm going to pause right there and first talk about Wither Horde doing its thing. What you're looking for with Wither Horde is essentially this number right here, this yellow, smaller number, smaller than what you would get for normal damage ticks with Wither Horde. That smaller yellow number means that you successfully got a tag. If you don't see that, if you don't hear the sound of the Wither Horde goop sort of gooping into something without setting down and creating that blighted pool, you know you've got a good hit. Now, I've been paying attention to this. I know that I've got two good hits. I know that I've got 2 knights that are definitely going to go down. Neither of them are down yet. And what I'm going to do now is essentially wait in one of the areas for both of those knights to go down, and I'm going to be watching the radar to see when those moats fall for me to safely pick up. Until that happens, I'm just going to stay behind cover. There's 1. And there's 2. And what I do want to call out, a very useful tool in this setup, is the radar. The radar is showing you moats on the ground, so you can use that as a quick way to see if your moats have landed or not. There are other ways. You can also check over here, since you always get Glimmer for a kill. You can see if you've got Glimmer. I don't like this as much because if 2 go down, you know, your Glimmer stacks sort of pile up all together. And generally the Radar is the better way to tell. But I've got all these dark motes down. What I'm going to do is quickly run out, relying on Striking Light to keep me safe, and collect all of those. Now I've only got 1 night left. Let me actually highlight this. We've only got this 1 night left. You'll watch that I am not going to do anything about this knight. I want him up, as we'll see in a second why. I've got my motes. I am first going to head over to one of the less safe wells. This one right here. This one and this white one here, those are in the middle. They're probably the least safe ones to be dunking into. I want to get those done first just so that they know that they're out of the way, and the rest of this is going to be a little bit easier. So we'll dunk the first one. Boom. Okay, so I dunked a well. That means that scions are coming back in. Now I've already gotten 1 set of scions, and they came in the first sort of, let's call it the A set of spawns. Right in front of where I started the encounter and around that structure. The B set of scion spawns, and it always alternates between the 2. One is going to end up right here in front of me, and then the other one is going to end up behind me over by that notch in the floor. It's going to be right next to there. So in preparation for that, I'm going to drop a Wither Horde right here and try to kill as many as I can. Just like that. And sure enough, there's the other one. This is the second location for the B set of scion spawns. It's just on the other side of this structure over here. So I'm going to throw down another Wither Horde, try to spawn trap as much as I can. There's the annual escape to clean up. Okay. So, here you're starting to see some of that rotation I was telling you about, where that knight was pushing me at my safe location, so I'm going to start rotating to number 2, and then around number 3. Essentially what I'm trying to do here there we go. We'll have enemies sort of scattered all around this main area here. What I'm trying to do by taking the long way around this area is kiting them and trying to group them all up into one pack within this playable space. When they're all one pack, they sort of slowly rotate and follow me around. But when they're grouped up like that, they're a little bit easier to deal with because at least I know where they're going to be. So I'm going 1 full rotation around just to reset everyone's position, see what I can do. Make sure to grab my charge of light. And I use my annual escape to just clean up a little bit. All right. So all the scions are down, and we still only have this one knight. It's not crazy. All the scions are down. There's just 2 enemies on this entire field. I've got all the time in the world to make a move now. So let's see what happens next. There's that knight. Finally isolated him. I'm going to tag him. I know he's dead. But my movement here is really, really particular because I know that I want light motes next. I had just done the dangerous dark mote location, which was right here. I want to do the light motes now because the light motes are a little bit scarier to get. Generally, when you're in darkness, you're also in cover, or at least all the safest spots are always in darkness on the map here, so the light motes are a little bit riskier to do. Generally, what I try to do is make the moat that I want out of the first 2 nights of any 3-night spawn. That's going to give us 1 night left while we're trying to do our dunks, which makes it very safe. But what I can do to get a head start on that is take the 3rd night of any group and try to get the moats I want out of him too. That essentially gives me a little bit of a margin of error. If I can't quite get my positioning right on those first 2 nights to make sure I get what I want, I've still got these 3 as a backup. So I only need to do 1 night correctly rather than 2. That I love to do this with the very last night of a pack. Light, light, light. Here come the knights. Tag 1. And I'll tag the other. That is worth going over the knight spawn location too, because the knights always come in the same spot all the time. You've always got one over here in this corner. You've always got one over here in this corner, and you've always got one all the way over here in between these 2 thin pillars here. This one is the hardest to deal with because these 2 are right on the outside edges of that very safe area for cover. Those are the ones I generally try to tag, and I'll leave this one up for last. That changes depending on my positioning, but rule of thumb mostly, these 2 are the easier ones to take down. We should talk about that movement specifically too. Let's rewind a little bit. So I know I want light motes out of these guys. They're both tagged. They're going to die. At this point, I know that I want light motes. So it is my job to survive while standing in the light for when they go down. With Witherhoard, it is where you're standing when they go down, as opposed to when you've tagged them, that generate the type of motes that you want. So I'm going to be coming over here, standing in the light, trying to get cover around this little structure in the back, but I'm also going to utilize one of the best things about this class, and that is the healing nade, to give myself a little bit more time in the light while things are crazy. I see one. Let's pause right here. So I know I'm safe to start collecting these motes because, again, the radar, I can see my 3 group there, and I can see my other 3 over there. I know I was in the light for when all those were made. We're looking pretty good. Let's collect them. Okay. We've got our lights, and we're bringing in our scions again. Now, if you remember what I said earlier, those spawns alternate. This was the exact same spawn that we dealt with in the very beginning. That means that I also know that there is another group waiting just off screen over here. So I'm going to use Witherhoard, spawn trap again in both locations. Okay, we got to talk about this movement because it is really, really helpful to be able to understand how to juke this Phalanx here. Let's rewind a little bit. So, once you're in line of sight with the boss for long enough that he thinks he can hit you, and I've just started that counter right now when I stepped out, I'm at the perfect range for him to boop, so I know that he is going to want to boop me. That is his default speed. I know a lot of people are dying to the boops of this guy. I did a lot too. We are going to talk about one piece of movement tech a little bit further down because I know I got it to work for me. But first, I want to talk about avoiding, because once he's got his shield locked in place, he can't turn anymore. What I'm going to do is just try to get around to the side of him. as quickly as I can. So I'm going to close the distance. As much as I can, because once I am closer to him, I can move around him and cover that much more of like a radial distance. You know, it is much less effort to go around when you're close than when you're, pretty far. If I were to try this movement at maybe this distance, as opposed to right up close to him, there's a chance that he will still catch me with that thing. So I close the gap, I get to this radius as quickly as I can, and then I start moving around to the side. That is going to help me dodge that. This movement works in Grandmasters too. I've survived Unstoppables doing this exact same thing. Boom, just like that. Dodged around, I can see my last charge with light orb. I'm going to pick that up. I'm now up to plus per times 5 charge with light. So I am done with that step. Time to kill this last knight. I know that I need light motes again, so I'm going to step out and watch my radar for those to come down. There they are, and here come the knights. Okay, so this is great, this is great, this is great. My movement here was not ideal, and I will show you what I did wrong, because I want you to see it. I am out in the open. I know the boss is right around here-ish, on this side of me. What I should be doing when I'm out in the open like this is I need to not only not stop moving, but to very rarely, if ever, change my direction. If I'm swinging around and I'd committed to going this direction long enough, I would have been fine. But what you'll see is that I came around here, I stopped, and then I started to double back a little bit because I changed my mind. I wanted these motes. I was trying to decide what to do. And for this area here, because I had changed direction out in the open, I essentially didn't get anywhere. I was stuck in here for a sec while the boss was charging his boop. So I got hit. Let's see that in action. Right, I double back, I come back around again, boom, booped. However, I am on Strafe Glide on Warlock, and that is what I recommend everybody run. Once you boop, you get up in the air. The sooner that you can activate your double jump to be able to get back, the better off you're going to be. Strafe jump does give you enough aerial control to basically change direction and still have enough time to float back. I recognize that I got booped. I popped that double jump right away, and I continue on my way, trying to get back into the number 1 sort of safe zone of the area. I've got my light motes. I see that knight that I expected right in front of me, so I tagged him. Now it is my job to stay alive in the light until I get the rest of the motes that I need. And here is where I make a mistake, and I am happy to show this off. At this point, because of the boop, essentially my plan got reset. I should have been thinking, I know that I need these other light motes. I know I need to be standing in the light. I got a little bit frazzled by the boop, and I've essentially forgotten that I still have one more light well to do. And you're going to see the rest of the gameplay essentially evolve around that, where I start looking for darks because I'm trying to finish off my last one, not knowing that it isn't my last one. I see some dark up there in front of me that I know I can grab, and I'm going to try to get them. That was a very risky move, and I do not recommend it. You can recognize the movement. I again tried to close the gap on Mr. Phalanx here and get around, but because this structure was here, I have a hard time getting around, and it's a little bit risky. I recognize the boss is here. I'm trying to close the gap and then go around in the same fashion. It's a little bit tight. I get hit. I probably should have died, but I didn't. healing nade, collecting as many of these darks as I can. And we've got our 2 knights because all 3 are down again. I know this one spawns here. I'm really desperate for this dark, trying to find him down. I have 4 moats, and I am in a pretty bad situation. I know that I have a knight behind me. Right? He's just off screen. I remember seeing him sort of collapse on me. And whenever you see a knight walk around, especially if they have been brave enough to come around the outside edge, they've gone full aggro. And I'm sure you guys have seen this a little bit. Every once in a while, these knights get real thirsty for that kill. They will run around everything. A dead giveaway of that is when they start coming around the outside edges of cover. That is when they're turned on. So I know I've got one behind me that's very scary. I've got 4 moats. I know that when I collect my last one, I'm going to lose all of my weapons, all of my ability to defend myself. And I've got another one right up here in front of me and very low health. This is where the fusion grenade matters. I'm going to collect this last one, and I'm going to burn that nade to get an overshield without stopping and without burning my moat. Do not forget about that overshield. It is so helpful. Something else that I want to call attention to as we get close to the end of this moat collect phase. The other reason that you want to sort of call this area your home, behind these structures here, is knights will gather up, around this corner, maybe over here in the middle, maybe over in this edge. You get a lot of knights sort of in this region right here. And knights being majors, they tend to be a little bit more generous on their ammo drops. Like, for example, we've got a heavy brick right here. There are going to be, I think, a couple other over here by the end of this. Having these heavy drops sort of stacked up here really helps alleviate the falling guillotine problem. You're actually going to see that live in this encounter, where we're going to see the fact that there are heavy drops sort of in this area where I am ultimately going to do boss damage is a huge difference maker. Being able to get a little bit more heavy ammo to help sustain that blade for as long as you can really, really helps. So I've got my Dark Moats Max. At this point, I still haven't remembered that I still have one more light well that's just on this side that needs to be cleansed. I'm essentially going to be going for this dark one right above me. I cleanse that. And what you're going to see here is essentially the beginning of my boss damage. One well too early. It almost ends up as a wipe. It's a bit of a disaster because we've also got, what you can see right above him, because we've just cleansed our third well. Scion spawns. That's what that is right there. Because this is the, I guess you can call it an even one, right? There's one at the start and then one after every well cleanse. We're going to get one set here, and we're going to get one set all the way back here behind me over by the other side of the safe area on A. I am essentially trying to do boss damage. I'm going to switch to Wither Horde, try to drop it, realize it's immune, and I'm going to get the hell out. Look at how close that mistake was. And you can see, sure enough, there's the other Scion spawns, right? They came in right over here. So now I've got Scions behind me and in front of me. I've got very low health. I don't actually have my grenade up, so now is finally the time, I think, that I use my rift to stay alive here. It'll be the first one of the entire encounter. I'm setting up shop. And I do want to go over that one more sec real quick. The value of the Dragonfly weapon. We've got a Scion here that is spawning. Scions are 2 shots with this hand cannon. He is going to multiply over here to the right. And that dragonfly shot is going to take care of his other friend too, which is 2 less bullets and that much less time to deal with. Continue training. I know that I only need my dark ones now, or my light ones, I'm sorry. So I'm going to hop over to the middle. I know that was the last one. Those knights, just so that you are aware of ahead of time, they're going to spawn right here. They're going to spawn right here. And there's going to be one off screen behind me. There are my last light motes. Those knights are coming in, but I'm going to ignore them because they despawn during damage. So, pop. Here we go. Here is the very quick damage phase, but there's a lot of stuff going in here. First thing I want to call your attention to is charge with light times 5. Very important going in. We are going with 5 stacks of Whirlwind Blade. The shield is going to go down, and the sword is going to come out, but not before a Witherhoard shot. I'm going to pop that right off the bat so that I get that passive Witherhoard damage before I even start trying to stack up Whirlwind Blade. Witherhoard goes in, and I start sorting. But you can see 2 things. One, the well is not out, and it is not coming out for a few seconds. Instead, I am trying to get on the opposite side of that shield that is over him. So I am always hovering on his left shoulder. Or his right shoulder, I should say. I'm over here because the shield blocks damage. We want to get as much as we can in before he even gets started. Keep in mind, this is actually the best that our sword damage is going to be doing because we are at Whirlwind Blade. Or we are at Keened, we are getting Loosened Blade, we're building up our Whirlwind Blade stacks. I am just going to chop at this guy as much as I can before the goblins start coming in. But it's a little bit intermittent because I'm constantly going to be repositioning to avoid that shield too. The best I can say with the heavy attack is you want to try to time it when he's either staggered or gone with that shield back attack. Okay, we'll pause right there. Let's go over a couple things. First off, oops, you can see, there's my pen. That thing I was telling you about the heavy ammo, it is coming into effect right here. There's a heavy brick right here in this sort of middle area where we've been trying to kill all of these knights. I've got that on hand for me whenever I need it, which is important because if you look at the ammo count, well, we started at 70 even with the reserves, and we're already down to 36. This thing is going through ammo very, very, very quickly. So having that brick there makes a huge difference. You really want to try to be killing knights in this section of the arena as much as possible. Get as many of those heavy bricks stacked up as you can. We've also got goblins coming in. That means Well of Radiance has to go down. This is essentially going to turn your everything into overdrive. Something else that happens when you pop Well of Radiance is you'll notice that my Whirlwind Blade is now gone. I have no more, so now is a great time to pop over to Witherhoard and get a second stack in to get that passive damage all through the rest of this fight. Other than that, we've got 3 stacks of Charge with Light, so I know I've got 3 stacks of Keened left. That especially matters for the charge time on the heavy attack. I'm essentially going on autopilot now, heavy attacking every chance I get and light attacking when I can't. that's the end of the fight. The big thing to make the damage phase work is to hold off on the well and to have loosened blades stacked up behind you. What you did notice is right there at the end, I ended up picking a little bit of extra heavy ammo to allow that extra sustain. If you go dry right at the end, it is worth taking the time to try to quickly find a heavy drop that might have spawned nearby so that you can keep the damage up. But other than that, that is essentially how I still one-phase that fight after all the Whirlwind Blade nerfs and all the Falling Guillotine nerfs. Thank you for watching, and I hope this helped.